Okay, hello. My name is Mikołaj Nowak, and I'm coming here from the Color TV company, and I'm going to tell you about the Chromecast. I'll tell you what is it and how to start developing with this device. At the beginning, I wanted to ask you if you have already played with Chromecast somewhere, have the opportunity to use it. Okay, and did you have opportunity to implement something for the Chromecast? That's. I need to warn you that I'm not going to tell any advanced things. I'm just going to tell you what the Chromecast is, how it works, what types of applications you can write for Chromecast. Then I show you components which are prepared by Google in order to let you provide better user experience with less effort from you. At the end, I will show you 2 sample applications in order to present you what you can do as an Android developer with Chromecast. Wait a second, because my pointer is not working. It's great. Okay, I owe you a few words of explanation at the beginning, because the topic I'm going to talk about is a little bit wider than just Chromecast, because I'm going to talk mostly about the Google Cast. What's the difference? The Google Cast is a technology which you can find in the Chromecast, but also in many other devices, like connected TVs with Android TV, also with some Roku TV. You can find it also on some big TVs which has built-in Chromecast inside. But you can hear sometimes that people are using the term Chromecast in terms of telling about technology. It's because Chromecast has only one functionality, which is supporting Google Cast. How to use it? You need to, of course, plug a Google Cast device and connect it to some screen. Then you have to find some app which is integrated with which can be integrated with a Chromecast. It could be an Android app, iOS app, or Google Chrome app. It can be any app you think about. They just need to add some framework provided by Google, and then add some button, a cast button, which is in the middle in here. And then if you click this button on the app, and you are in the same Wi-Fi network with your Google Cast device, then you can start casting. How this casting works, I can bet that some of you are thinking that you will see the same screen as you see on your mobile, for example, on the TV, but it's not working this way. Google wanted to provide you a technology in which you can control an app with multiple devices from multiple platforms. So they prepared a web browser on the Chromecast, on which is run a web app, which you are just controlling with messages from your sender devices. How it works, when you start casting, your application is sending an app ID to the Chromecast. This app ID you are taking from the Google dashboard, in which you are assigning an URL to your web app to an application. Chromecast is requesting Google Cloud in order to receive this URL. Then a web browser on the Chromecast is just using this URL in order to request your server to receive a web app, which is JavaScript, HTML, and CSS app. Then this app is launched on the web browser, and it is displayed on the TV. This flow happens when you are launching your app for the first time. When you are doing it the second and the other time, then the phase of taking your URL from the Google Cloud is skipped because it's already cached in the device. So you need to remember about it when you are developing, and you will change an URL pointing to your web app. Then you need to remember that your Chromecast has to be restarted in order to have an actual version of your application. The same you need to remember when your app is in production. Then when you are changing something on your sender app, it has to be compatible also with the old versions of this receiver application, web application on Chromecast, because when they launch the app quite quickly after your newest release of web application, you can be sure that the application will be updated, and we can just display some message on the sender app also that you should restart the receiver in order to have a new version of your application. The second step of this process also can be skipped. It happens when you are launching your application quite quickly after you stopped it last time, because Chromecast is also caching this website sometimes. You need to remember about it when you are developing this web application, and it's good to take some effort to disable this caching if you don't want to refresh your application multiple times until it will be refreshed and shown the actual version of a web app. When the application is launched, then you can set up a channel on which you provide a communication. You are setting this channel with a namespace, which has to be prefixed by such a name, your xcast, and then you are given a custom channel name. You can set up as many channels as you want in order if you would like to divide your architecture to send some kind of messages in one part, another one on the other channel, etc. When you set up this channel, you can provide a communication. It can be two-way communication. You can set up these channels both on the receiver app on Chromecast and the sender app on your mobile. You can set up this channel with different namespaces on the one side and the other one. And usually communication looks like this way, that from your sender app, you are just sending messages in order to control what's happening on the web browser, on the receiver. And receiver is notifying all devices on the status what's happening on the web app. It can notify only one device, and it can also notify every device which is connected at the same time, because as I mentioned you, we can connect as many devices as we want. When we are connecting a new device, there are two scenarios. One is that we are launching the same app with the same app ID. Then, of course, application is already loaded, and you don't need to load it from the server, so we can move to the phase of setting up a channel. It can be the same channel for multiple platforms like Android and iOS, or there could be different. It's up to you. And when you set up the channels, then you can start communication in the parallel to your previous device, because it's still connected, and you can do communication at the same time from both devices. You can use it in some interesting way, for example, developing some party games in which you don't need to buy any additional controllers. You just need to, your guests just have to have a mobile, which is an Android or iOS, and then they just join the game and play without any problems. Of course, there are some restrictions that you have only one screen available. Still, I think that there could be many interesting ideas. The second scenario, when you are launching your new device, that's when you are launching a new application which sends a new app ID. Then the process of taking the web app from the server and taking it from the Google Cloud is repeated. The application is changed on the web browser, and connection with the previous device is broken here. There is also a possibility that the connection with all the devices will be broken, and your web application will be still loaded in the device and working. You can use it, for example, in video apps. If you'd like to just launch some video, then if you don't want to drain any battery, you can close your application on your mobile device and still watch the video because it's taken from the web. You don't need to maintain any communication between devices. And if you'd like to change a video or pause it, you can just relaunch your application on the mobile, and you are still controlling the application which is working in there. If you'd like to close the application, then you need to remember that Chromecast likes to disconnect quite often, and you cannot recognize on your Chromecast device if the disconnection was just a suspension of connection or your application on mobile was closed. So you need to use some tricks, for example, timeout, in order to close your application. Just do not close the application when the connection is just suspended, because your user experience would suffer. And the other problem is in here that you cannot cache any status of your application on the Chromecast. It would have to be loaded once again from the beginning, and you would have to set up the place from it should begin from the beginning. I've mentioned you already there are 3 types of centered application which you can use. It's Android, Google Chrome, and iOS. But there are also 4 types of receiver applications. So the applications which are run on the Chromecast device. The first one is provided by Google. It's a media receiver. It's a media player, default media receiver. It's a media player to which you don't need to write any JavaScript, HTML, CSS code because it's already done. You just have to use some type of messages which are prepared for these players. It's just a little bit more effort on your sender's application. But I think it's worth to do that. You can also customize it a little bit with usage of the styled media receiver. In this type of receiver, you can just use some simple CSS file in order to change some appearance of this player. You can change a background and logo. Also, you can change the progress bar, watermark on the video, the same for the audio. And you can use the splash, which is displayed at the beginning of your application. I forgot to tell you that with both default media receiver and style media receiver, you can send videos, audios, and pictures. You cannot customize pictures because it's just displaying pictures and there's nothing to customize in there. The third type of application is a custom receiver. It's the receiver which I was focusing up to this time. So it's just a web app which you are writing on yourself and you are managing it from the both sender and receiver side. So there's nothing more to tell here. And the fourth type of application is a remote display receiver. And here it's a big difference to this everything which I told you up to this time. It doesn't count in here because it's not a web app. It's an application which uses an OpenGL engine. It's prepared mostly for game developing, and it's in experimental phase. And probably I would have to tell more about this. It would take another presentation time, so now I skip it. And if you'd like to see more, you can just write in internet. Google provided us a few mobile components which you can use in order to make our application better. The first one which we need to use, we have to use in every application which is supported in the Chromecast is a Google Cast button. It's handling all the connection stuff for itself. So we need to let the user to use this button in order to start casting. We cannot do it on ourselves in the background. When we click this button, it will help us to see all the devices that are connected. I'll now show you other components in the free applications. I just forgot to launch this. Okay, I will use sample app from Google. It's a video app. As you can see, here is the cast button. When I click it, we can choose a device. Here is our Chromecast device. When I click it once again, before any video is played, there is just possibility to stop casting. But when I launch a video, then it's launched on the Chromecast. It takes some time to start it. Oh, I paused it. Okay, starting. You have to be with me that it was shown on Chromecast. I won't show it like now we did because it's just a video in there. Here appeared an fragment, which is provided by Google. You can put it in any place of your application. It just helps you to control the content on the Chromecast in any place of your app. When you click it, there is another component. It is activity, which you can also use in order to control your media. You can scroll it in here, set up subtitles, change it, also change a video if you are setting up a queue, unmutate it, and pause and play. Also now, when I click the cast button now, you can see that the controller is also displayed in here. You have also some sample information about your video with a picture which you are setting up, the title, subtitle in here. Also, when you put your application to the background, in your notification bar, there will be displayed also another mini controller. You don't need to do any additional code in order to display this controller. Also, on your lock screen, there will be also some controller. You can click it and move to any place in your application you want. This controller is also made by default, but you need to remember that they won't be available on all the devices. For example, on my Xiaomi, it's not working. Okay, now we'll start some development. In order to do that, we need to register our application in the a lot of tabs in your Google dashboard. In order to register there, you have to pay a $5 registration fee. I've already done it on my company account. Then we will register. We can add as many apps as we want. We have in here two sections. One is an application section. The other one is devices section. In application section, we can add new apps. These are custom receiver, style media receiver, and remote display receiver. In custom receiver, we have the embed name and the URL to a web app. In style media receiver, there's a difference that we are just setting a CSS URL. And remote display receiver doesn't give us any URL. We are just setting up a name in order to generate some app ID. When I add an application to this application, there will be application ID generated in here. We can use it now in our application. Interesting thing in here is then in style media receiver, there's quite a cool feature. Then we can see what our media player will look like with our CSS file. CSS file which I used in here, it looks like this. You can see these are just the fields which you've seen on the presentation, like background, logo, progress bar, splash, and watermark, and a simple CSS in order to set some background, color, image, also some size, for example, for watermark. And in our dashboard, we can preview how it look like. Here is a splash, which looks like the same as the logo, which is appeared now. Here is a background. We can see how it looks like when we play some audio. The same with the video. And images are simple. The important thing is here is also that also on the receiver, there will be displayed the info which we've seen on our media players. So here is an image. Also there is a title, which is not visible in here, and subtitle. We can have our applications published or unpublished. When our application is unpublished, then we can use it only on the devices which are in the devices section. In order to add some device, we are setting up a serial number and description, which is used only for dashboard. Okay, now I'll show you two sample applications. One will be using the custom receiver, and the second one will be the style media receiver. I'll first show you an application, then the code. In style media receiver, I will show you just the differences between the custom receiver and the style media receiver in there. I won't show you the same code. So coming back to our device, firstly, custom application using custom receiver. The worth to notice in here is that we have 2 buttons in here, because we can set up our cast button in both menu and any place in the layout, but they are synchronized. So when we connect to the device with any button, they are both working the same at the same time. When we submit our message, it's a simple hello word. It's sent to our Chromecast and returned with some pre-data. I'll show you how the Chromecast device looks like. It's really simple hello word in here. It's not working now. Yeah. Here is just, as you see, the simple hello word. When I change something on my application, then you can see this message changing here. Okay, so now I'll move to the code. As usual, when you are adding some framework, you need to add some dependencies. In our case, there are 3 dependencies which you need to add. It's an app compat, media router, and Android GMS Play Services Cast framework. We need to also implement an options provider class interface, implementing a get cast options method, in which we need to build a cast options object in which we are passing our application ID, which is set it up in and dashboard. Our activity is pretty simple. The only thing which is unusual in here is this metadata, in which we need to point to our options provider, which I showed you before the second. Our main activity is also pretty simple. The only thing worth to see in here is the media route button. It's just a simple view which we can add in any way we want. And the second button is in our menu. It's a simple item which is pointing with an action provider class to media route action provider. In our main activity, setting up these buttons is pretty simple. We are using a setup media route button method from the cast button factory class. We are passing in case of view button and context and our button view. In the case of our item in menu, we are passing the context, menu object, and ID of our button. Interesting thing which is given by Cast SDK is Session Manager Listener. It's a listener which is giving us a callbacks on every connection events, like session started, resume connection, failure, disconnection, etc. There are plenty of them, and each of these callbacks is having a cast session object. We are using this cast session object in order to provide every communication with our receiver app. We are doing it by setting up a channel, which I mentioned you earlier. We are using the namespace in here. We're just setting up a receive callback, passing a namespace and our object of a channel. This object of a channel looks this way. It's implementation of message received callback. Here we are just setting namespace in the constructor. It's like Google recommends it, but we don't need to use this way. We need to implement an onMessageReceived method in which we are receiving cast device, in which we have some information about the device from which the message comes. Namespace, if we would like to use the same callback in order to handle many namespaces, and this message which is just a simple string. We are also using the cast session object in order to send messages. It's just using a send message method with a namespace and our string message. Quite important class in the Cast SDK is cast context. It's handling everything what's connected to the Cast SDK. It's in this class. We need to invoke a get_shared instance method at least once in our application with giving a context there. Then everything, all the stuff related to the Chromecast is launched. And we can take everything from this object then. If you would like to support Android below version 4.0, we need to also invoke such a method. It's quite long and intuitive. We also use this cast context in order to register our session manager listener, which I showed at the beginning is the listener which is handling all the connection stuff. We also need to remove it if we don't need it anymore. Okay, I now move to the second application. It's application using a style media receiver, but actually it also can use default media receiver. I will show you that it's just one line of difference. And here, when we start our video, when it's not connected, it starts in here. It's good user experience that when we connect to the device, then we are stopping playing video in here and start playing it on the receiver app. Oh, so there's some connection problems. Okay, now it's connected. It's played on the Chromecast. I want to show you how it looks like there because it's pretty obvious. I haven't added any additional controllers in here, but as I mentioned you, we can see still in here our controller, mini controller in notification bar. The same is on a lock screen. Oh, the previous one is also in here because I didn't disconnect the last application. Close it. As I mentioned, there is only one line in difference between using a style media receiver and default media receiver. We just need to set our application ID taken from the Google dashboard if we want to use a style media receiver, and we need to use provided application ID in case you would like to use a default media receiver. So here is the only difference in our sender code. As I mentioned you, if you want to use media players, media receivers, we need to use object which is prepared by Google. It is a media info object. We are building it with a builder to which we are passing in a constructor an URL to our media. Then we have to set up a stream type, also metadata, in which we are passing a title, subtitle, and image, which we are using which is used in our controllers provided by Google, and also in the Google Cast receiver. Then we have to also set content type, which is a MIME type, and we need to build it. In our case, it's just one video, so it's simple factory, returning the same object. In our main activity, as I mentioned, it's good in user experience case to play video when we are playing a video on the mobile, start playing it on the Chromecast. And also when we are using default media receiver, you've noticed that we are using the same app ID for multiple applications. So it's quite important to check then what's the media played on the Chromecast right now, because there is a case in which another application is working and we are just connecting to this application, so we can handle it then. We are checking what's played on the remote controller with the usage of remote media client taken from cast session object, from which you can take media info, which is the object taking all the data about our media, and we can take then our URL and in our case just switching a video. Also, it's good to check if the video is playing in our mobile and then start playing. And this method, more exactly, it's in here. Sorry. Okay, we are starting playing video with method load on remote media client. We are passing to it our media info object. We can set up if our video should be autoplayed when it's launched, and we can set a position from which it should start. We can also add a progress listener in order to listen to the progress changing. We can set up a period which we are registering this progress. It's good to use it if you would like to synchronize our mobile player when the application is disconnected. We can also take this progress from the remote media client with usage of media status and then getting stream position. But as I noticed, it's less accurate than using the progress listener. And we cannot use this taking a stream position when we are disconnected, so we won't use it to synchronize our video player on the mobile. This remote media client gives us a lot of quite intuitive methods like pause, play, load, methods which you can find in many other players. But there are also a bunch of methods of managing queues. We can do many of these methods in here. We are just adding our media info with the usage of media queue item, which is just a wrapper for our media info object. And then this remote media client is taking care of all the management of the queue for itself. Okay, so there will be everything about just using the remote media client without usage any additional components. Now I'll show you how to add this activity, which I showed you on the sample app. So this activity, which is taking care of changing the progress, for example, of our video on the remote player. We just need to extend an expanded controller activity in order to set up media root button in there. Then we need to add it to our Android manifest. It's important in here that we need to use a theme which has no action bar in there. Otherwise, it won't work. And then we can use it in our activity. We are doing it this way. Google recommends to use a listener in which you are getting an on-status updating method. It's launched when our video is loaded. So there we can start our activity with this expanded controller, and then we can remove our remote media client. And when the listener is set up, we can load our video. And the second component, which is quite easy to add, is a fragment controller, which we can add in any place of our application. It's just a simple fragment, which is taking all the care about this checking with status, controlling with the usage of cast context class. So we just need to use this class fragment. We can put it in our layout, and also we can use it in our code with usage of fragment manager. I forgot to show you how our cast application looks like. This from the custom receiver. In our HTML, we can see it's pretty simple, it's just one div. And we are taking here our library as a JavaScript library. It gives us access to cast object. From the cast object, we can get cast receiver manager, from which we can listen such events as on ready, on sender connected, or sender disconnected. We can also take a senders list from this manager. We can also see if the system volumes changed. Also, we can take from this object a message bus, which we are initiating with our channel name. On this message bus, we can listen messages in which we are taking a sender ID in here and data, which is a message. And we can send messages also with the usage of this message bus. We can do it on two ways. We can use send method, which is taking a sender ID and an argument and a message, which is a string message. And we can also send our message to the broadcast with usage of broadcast method. Then we don't need to set our sender ID. when we set up everything, we just need to invoke start method of our cast receiver manager. Okay, that will be pretty everything what I had to tell you. I hope that you are now aware what you can do with the Chromecast, and maybe you do you integrate our application into Chromecast. As I've checked today, our applications which are supporting the Chromecast, there are mostly the videos applications, but you can see that there are also another possibilities in here. And adding the Chromecast functionality also can help you boost your applications, because all the applications are gathered, which are supporting the Chromecast, are gathered in one section of Google Play Store. So there, when somebody is using Chromecast, you can just check what application they can use, and it's much easier to see your application in there. Okay, so I wanted to thank you. And when you would like to start developing, I recommend you to use Google Developers tutorials, because they are pretty good for Chromecast. And do you have some questions? Yeah.